Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello and welcome to Talks with Tracy. I'm your host, Tracy Claremont, coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I always appreciate everyone who takes the time to listen to the show, and I always appreciate Bold Brave Television Network for having me. So I've been on a bit of a mission for the last couple of weeks. If you've been watching, you know this already, but I've been talking to some of my favorite people about this feeling of being stuck in our lives, like, that feeling of not being able to move forward and how we might get unstuck. It's a feeling of just kind of being unhappy with the state of your life and feeling like you need change, but not knowing how to accomplish change or how to even get started. And it's a tough place to be. I've certainly been in that place myself several times in my lifetime. Well, I can assure you, even when life feels like it has no meaning and purpose, every life has purpose and meaning. Everybody has meaning and purpose for being here, and we all have infinite value and infinite potential. It's just that sometimes we lose sight of that, or sometimes we don't even realize that in the first place. But it's true. So I've been focusing on just building up our tools and our toolboxes that will help us in those moments where we feel like we're stuck in our life. Tools that'll help us to move forward and move towards fulfillment and happiness. So what I've been finding is that sometimes it's a matter of changing our perspective in our lives. Sometimes we're moving forward and we don't even know it. We don't recognize it. I had my perspective changed recently by my friend who is an astrologer, when I was telling her that, I felt like I hadn't quite achieved all I had anticipated achieving in 2024. In fact, I told her I felt like I was doing a whole lot of revisiting past trauma. And, my dear friend, she really did a beautiful job of helping me put things into perspective by telling me that that's what I was meant to be doing in 2024. In fact, that was an important step before I could move forward into those things that I am wanting to accomplish. I needed to do that like emotional house cleaning so that I could clear my body and my mind, this vessel that I have, to bring forth the things that I want to accomplish in my life. So that was a really important step, and it really was helpful. Changing my perspective, it was just extremely helpful. It shifted my thinking from I didn't accomplish enough or what I intended to, wow, I did a lot of great healing work. I'm glad that's done. And now I can move forward and expand. So today's guest is one of my very favorite people to visit with things like this about. She's actually one of my very favorite people to visit with anything about. I proudly call myself one of her biggest fans. And every conversation that I have with her is, it really affects me in a meaningful way. And I have the amazing and beautiful psychic medium Lisa Adams joining me today to talk about this being stuck and how we can shift that and how we can shift our perspectives. She's always so great about sharing her own personal experiences, and she always helps me in the greatest of ways to put things into perspective. So I know that she will be helpful to all of you as well. So I strongly recommend her for readings, and I have put her email contact information in the written description for the episode today. So that's where you would find that. So please join me in welcoming the amazing and beautiful Lisa Adams back to the show.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi. Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good,
Haven't been
yeah.
burned out yet, so we're all pretty good up here.
Oh. Oh, I'm glad that you are not on fire and that you are safe, truly.
Well,
You're
we
in
did have,
California, right?
yes, one started up here yesterday, very close by, so we were all put on warning,
Mm.
but mostly up here where I am,
Oh.
it was just smoke. It was mostly down in the Ventura area. But
Mm.
fingers crossed it's contained.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah. Pray
Absolutely.
for-
So you heard my opening comments. I've been talking, I've dedicated the month of January to talking about this getting unstuck. So I know you've been so great about sharing some of your own personal experiences on this show. Do you relate to that? Do you also have moments of being feeling stuck?
Oh yeah, I've been feeling stuck for months lately. But I know
Oh,
it's
okay.
I had some physical things that I needed to take care of. So it was more like a situational feeling stuck than an overall feeling stuck. But
Situational.
once you recognize that you are stuck, it's a whole lot easier to decide to get unstuck.
Mm,
But
yeah.
people don't like to people don't that, oh, I'm stuck, I'm here in this situation, I'm stagnant, I'm not doing this, I should be doing that. And
Mm,
even though when we feel stuck, there's no such thing as being stagnant, because our lungs
okay.
are breathing, our heart is beating, our cells are multiplying and dividing or doing whatever cells do. So there's no such thing really as stagnation except for in our own mind, if that makes
Mm,
sense. Because
right.
we all think we should be someplace else doing something different or being a little bit more productive than we are. But sometimes being stuck is rest too. So
Mm,
because we do need rest, sometimes we just have to calm down and not be doing so much. Sometimes,
right.
but if we recognize where we are and why we're stuck, which is, okay, this could be a rust, it could be something that I've been hanging around or entertaining too much. And when we go there, we invite depression in.
Mm,
And when you invite depression in, then you're just really going down the rabbit hole instead of, like I
mhm,
said, accepting where we are right now, doing what we can right now. And um, some days all we can do is get up and brush our teeth. And that's
mhm,
okay if that's all we do. We have to start once we recognize that we're stuck or that it has turned into depression, then we can make the decision to move forward. And if we've gone so
mhm,
far as to being stuck and being in that depression, sometimes all you can do is brush your teeth that day. And if
mhm,
we
mhm,
recognize that, then we can change up the energy, even if um, you brush your teeth with your right hand, changing up the energy of brushing your teeth with your left hand. It moves the energy in a different way because you're doing something different than you normally do, and that changes the energy. And our
mhm.
thoughts change the energy as well.
Oh,
Sorry, didn't mean to
absolutely.
ram.
No, no, that's great. I agree with everything you're saying. Uh, we are energy.
Yeah.
Our bodies, our minds, our souls, all of it. We are energy. And I like your point about doing even just one thing to change up that energy, doing one thing differently to kind of
Hmm.
break break that energy, and start us moving, start us activating a little bit. I also like what you said about we're never stagnant, And again, that gets back to something is always happening in us,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not we recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different ways to view moving forward. Just like I
Mm-hmm.
said in the introduction, I was saying, wow, I felt like in 2024 I kept getting thrown back into past trauma and processing, and helping my family even process traumas that had been experienced. And I was like, so that initially in my mind was not moving forward, but I wasn't stagnant at all. I was actually moving forward in big ways that were
Yeah.
required.
Yeah. Yeah. You think you're
Mm-hmm.
stuck, but you're really not. It's just, sometimes it's just really slow going. And a lot of it is our own mind because we think we should be somewhere else doing something else when
Mm,
always we are in the right place at the right time, engaged in what we're supposed to be doing. And even if that's is sitting on the couch in your pajamas, it's, well, sometimes that's where we have to go in order to um, process what our experience is,
mm-hmm.
because we all think things should be differently than they are. And when we think that way, we have a tendency, we can get stuck on an idea or an ideal that I don't want to say realistic, but it's not realistic because we're thinking we should be someplace else and doing something different than what we're actually doing right now. And there's only this minute, there's only now. And
Mm-hmm.
and now is not a moment,
Mm-hmm.
because if you think about your past, can you go back to your past at all? You can in your memory, but you
Mm-hmm.
cannot physically go back and be involved in that, nor can you go in the future. You can imagine what it might be like or what you'd like it to be like, but
Right.
all we have is now. So if now you're feeling stuck, you have to realize that now is your point of forward movement. Now is your point of healing. Now is your point of reconciliation or whatever it is you're trying to do that you've got going on that you think should be different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
now is now is not a moment. Now is always. It's a consistent.
Mm. Yeah,
Is that that'll
that
you out
makes
there for
perfect.
some people?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I heard somebody say the other day, I always write down little quotes from people. And
Mhm.
I heard somebody say the other day, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And
Yeah.
that, I think that speaks to what you're saying. And it definitely
Hmm.
speaks to our perceptions.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
shifting our perceptions of things um, can really be a way to get us out of a rut, unstuck from a rut, and get us moving forward.
Yes. And our perception, it doesn't only work with being stuck in a rut. Our perception pretty
Hmm.
much applies to everything in our life.
Everything, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I know. I was before today's show, I was talking to my sister, and she was saying, I mentioned a job a program that she had applied for a job, and she ended up not getting that job. And she was saying how, or we were talking about how that job wasn't the job for her, because then she went on to get a job that she really enjoyed, and then she met somebody who is really important to her now, and she's building a relationship with, and all these things have have happened and wouldn't have happened had she gotten that job that she
Hmm.
didn't get. So even like in that moment, she might have been upset that that didn't work out, but then, realizing that there was something bigger and better unfolding for her, and that
Yeah.
wasn't meant for her. A lot of
And
times
some,
we get down on ourselves, though, like, if we or see that as a failure or something, and really it's not, it's just not meant for us.
exactly. And as soon as or the time isn't the right time. It could be the right job,
Mm,
but maybe 6 months down the road.
mm,
And the new job that she got that she truly loves may just be a placeholder until the universe puts together what it is she actually wants. I'm not saying the job she has now is not good for
mhm.
her. She's happy,
Right, right.
obviously. But
Hmm.
I was just saying that, it may not, we don't know. We really don't know, because there
Hmm.
could be it could be a placeholder for while the universe orchestrates and organizes the
Mm,
job we do need, because the universe always provides for us, always. And if you need a job and then you don't get the job you want there and you get another job, who knows, that other job is just a placeholder. It's a provision for you, maybe something to keep the wolves away until your
mm,
dream job or your dream house or your dream whatever is
relationship.
orchestrated. Yeah, yeah.
Right, right. So again, like there's some uh, seemingly simple things that we can do when we're feeling stuck to get unstuck. And what you're saying, you mentioned that, just changing something up in your, like brushing your teeth with your left hand, doing something different is important. And sometimes, like you said, that's all we can do. That's all we can do that day. And then we need to, you know, appreciate that, give ourselves some strokes. Good job.
Hmm.
And there's, shifting our perspectives, using different words, language, and ourselves, when we're talking to ourselves. I fully believe that one of the worst things we can do for ourselves is to talk down about ourselves to ourselves, because
Hmm.
our subconscious is always listening. Every cell in our body is always listening to every thought and every word we use about
Yes.
ourselves. Yeah. And then it all acts
Uh,
accordingly.
yes. Yes. And then dependent upon what we're telling ourselves in that situation, our
Hmm.
body is going to respond to that. We're either going to be
Hmm.
stressed or fearful, or we'll let ourselves get into depression, or
Hmm.
many things, because again, we think things should be a different way than they are, but the universe is always giving us signs every
Hmm.
day. Like if you're out there looking for a job and every door is closed in your face, yeah, you can start thinking, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? When really, maybe you're not supposed to be working right now. Maybe you're supposed to be resting, or maybe you're supposed to be going to school. How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to do this, afford childcare or whatever? The universe always, always provides. It's never what you think it will be, but it's a provision nevertheless.
Hmm.
It's
Right.
always there.
Yeah.
At least in my life experience, it has always been there. Always.
Hmm. Yes.
Uh,
In my life experience as well, I can't say in my life experience I have always seen and recognized that, but
mhm.
it always has been. So,
Yeah. Well, I haven't in before I learned to pay attention to that, I didn't
hmm
recognize it either. I would wring my hands and say, "Woe is me." But it always worked out. It always, always worked out for me. Always. In fact, I wrote down something that I wanted that um I thought would be helpful after you and I spoke about being on the show the other day. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to tell this is, and I've been saying this for a while. It says, all is well. Everything is working out for my highest good. And out of this experience slash situation, only good will come and I am safe. So,
Mm.
and that's kind of it's a good mantra to be where you are. If you don't know what else to say to yourself, say
Mm.
that, because our body is listening. And everything is working out for my highest good, always. Even if it seems horrible and ugly, it's still working
Right.
out for the highest
Yes,
good of everyone.
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And again, that is a perfect example of a place to start,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know people get so caught up in, I want this change, I want to do that. I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start. It can be as simple as saying something like that every morning
Mm-hmm.
when you wake up, every night when you go to bed, in the middle of the day, as often
Mm-hmm.
as you want to. You know, even if you feel like you don't, even even if you feel like you're telling a lie, you know, that's not how my life is. Say it anyway, because, you know, like I always say, you're already lying to yourself. You're already saying awful things about yourself when you really are
Yeah.
love and light. So
Mm-hmm.
why not tell yourself something better, even if it doesn't feel like the truth, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, sometimes when we go into that stuck or blocked or whatever stagnant place, sometimes we have to go there in order to heal. Because if
Hmm.
everything's all sunflowers and daisies and blue skies, there's no contrast there. How are you going to know when you have it good if you haven't experienced something unwelcome or unpleasant? Is it, well, all horrible experiences are unwelcome, but how do we know there's no contrast? And we need that contrast in order to progress along in our life. We always
Hmm.
have to have that again, it comes back to now. It's always
Hmm.
now. And now everything is working out for me, even if I don't see it. Now is the right time for me to be sitting around the house in my pajamas, as long as I recognize it and acknowledge it and don't plan to stay there for 2 years.
Hmm.
So, yeah. So I'm
Perfect. I
sorry. I
love
don't mean,
that. Oh,
yeah.
I love everything you're saying, and I agree with everything you're saying. Thank you so much for that. It's time to break for just a brief commercial break. And when we return, though, Lisa, I would love to keep talking about this exact thing. And then also, I'd like to kind of tie in um, how psychic readings and messages like that can be
Oh,
part of our
okay.
forward progression.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we will be right back. You're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television. See you in a couple minutes.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy. Coming to you live on the Bold Brave Television Network. I have the honor and privilege today of visiting with one of my favorite people, psychic medium Lisa Adams. Thank you, Lisa, for being here again. Now, before the break, we were talking about different ways that we can shift our energy, shift our perspectives, use words that will serve us better, different things like that. And I had asked you how we might use psychic readings to help us along in this process, in this progression. And I know that I have received many readings from you that have been really helpful in kind of helping me to sort out what is happening and put meaning to it, and again reinforce what you said earlier about everything happening for a reason. You know, there's never anything that is going wrong in the universe. It's always happening as it's meant to happen. And when I've received readings from you, that has been really, that's what it has reinforced for me. And that has been really, really helpful for me. So from my own personal perspective, that's how psychic readings have helped me. Can you talk a little bit about how it helps people?
Well, yeah, a lot of people will come to you, oh, when am I going to get a job? When am I going to get married? When am I going to find my boyfriend? Is my husband cheating? Is my wife cheating? When am I going to go on my trip? And, you know, all these other questions. And you could come to me and say, just for example, I think my husband's stepping out on me. And you go, okay, are you ready to really hear that truth? Because when you hear that truth, it's going to change your whole life. And then if I said, yes, there is, yep, he is stepping out on you. Okay, what are you going to do with that information? And it's the same thing when we get stuck. And if you were stuck in something, when am I going to get unstuck? Well, Tracy, if you want to get unstuck, these are the things within yourself that you need to look at. And sometimes I'll give homework, and sometimes I don't give homework because it's unnecessary. Sometimes that homework is as simple as going for a walk outside barefoot just so you can get some grounding. And once you're grounded, then you'll be and centered, then you'll be able to, you know, go in the direction that you need to go once you have the clarity from being grounded. Because when we get in situations and we come to a psychic or psychic medium or a tarot card reader or anybody else that we're looking for advice, even a licensed professional, you have to be willing to follow their advice. And sometimes you have to be willing to hear a truth that others may be picking up on, but you yourself are not. And, oh, I don't do that. Yes, you do. This is an area of your life where you need to work. But a lot of my readings are for health, uh, mental, emotional, and spiritual health.
Okay.
I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose. I would be able to say, oh, you got a little something going on with your lungs. You may want to go have your respiratory system checked out. That's about as diagnostic as I get. It's mostly with the spiritual and emotional illness or dis-ease uh,
Hmm.
that I work with. And then other times, a relative, an ancestor will come through, or a spirit guide will come through and tell them what they need to do. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
best ones.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds beautiful. And I will say, just to kind of throw out another way that I have utilized your readings, um, a lot of times I am wanting to support my kids, adult kids, my kids who are minors. I'm wanting to support them in whatever they're going through. So
Hmm.
I have, on more than one occasion, turned to you with that question. So, just kind of said, this is a situation with my adult daughter, and then how can I support her? How can I provide her meaningful support, or even my son, and something that will be really helpful to her, because sometimes I'm at a loss, and we can be at a loss in some of our relationships and want to reconnect with a person but really don't know how to connect with them again. I mean, those are all questions that we can ask somebody like you, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Well, for example, this was maybe 10, 12 years ago. I was going to see a friend play at a music venue, and they were there once a week for many weeks. And I would go every once in a while, and I noticed there was this one lady there, and I kept looking at her, and I knew I had to say something, but I didn't know her. And you don't want to just walk up to somebody and say, hello, do you have children? This is what I see for your son. And people will look at you like you grew a second head right in front of them. So after seeing her, the feeling inside me got so strong. And so finally I approached her and I asked her, I said, do you have a son? And she said, yes. I said, are you having difficulties with him? And she said, yes, I am. And I said, it's your fault. And she said, why is it my fault? I said, because anytime he gets into a situation, you're not letting him experience the rewards or consequences. You're trying to control it and
Mhm.
keep him safe, when really you're running around with a velvet pillow, and every time he's about ready to fall on his butt, you shove the pillow underneath him when he needs to fall on his
Mhm.
bottom, because
Mhm.
that's how he'll learn. And as a parent, we have a tendency to interfere because we don't want our children to experience it being uncomfortable or in an unpleasant situation. So
Mhm.
I told her she needs to back off and let her son do what he's going to do and experience what he's going to experience. And she did. And he ended up going to jail for 2 years, but he came
Mhm.
out and way better, straightened up his act. He's a good father now. He's
Mhm.
a good employee. He's almost a model citizen, I would guess. But
Mhm.
and going to jail is what he needed to experience in order to get his act together.
Mhm.
So as a parent, we have a tendency to interfere, because we don't want our child to experience any unpleasantness. And we definitely don't
Mhm.
want them to experience their consequences if it's going to be a harsh consequence.
Hmm. Right.
So, yeah. So, if you came to me about your child and I said, you need to allow your child to have these experiences because you're interfering with his karma, or this is a life lesson for him, this is what
Mhm.
he needs to learn, or he will learn from this experience or experiences, you have to let him. It's
Hmm.
it's it's a hard thing to do,
Right.
but if you're
Definitely.
it's very, as a parent, it's very difficult to do. But the thing also, if your child had a serious illness, disease, and the treatment was painful, as much as you didn't like it, you would let that uh,
Mhm.
you would let that treatment happen, even though it's unpleasant,
Right.
because it's for their uh, highest good, their health. And it's the
Mhm.
same thing when we have children that are, you know, wandering off the beaten path, which sometimes isn't always a bad thing when they wander. That saying, all who
Mhm.
wander are not lost. They're just
Mhm.
on their journey. But as a parent, um I know what that feels like. And then as a child, there are children who have grown up with addicted parents, drug
Mhm.
addicted, alcohol addicted, and then they die. um and they die in their addiction, and the child takes on all that. What could I have done to help my dad? What could I have done to
Mhm.
help my mom not drink? What could I have done?
Mhm.
How could I have been a better child? And that's a big weight to carry around with you. It's huge.
Mhm. Yeah, I see that
And
all the time.
oh yeah, yeah. And a good book for people to read if they have an addicted family member is called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. I forget the author's name, but she was a television writer. She wrote for TV in New York. But it's The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. It's a very good book, and it gives some spiritual insight into addictive behavior and addiction, and why people choose that when they come into this life. Because you chose
Mhm.
your life, I've chose mine, we chose our parents.
Mhm.
And for someone to come in that has chosen an addiction to have that experience, that's rough. It's really rough, especially when you have all those outside forces saying you're wrong. When are you going to straighten out? When are you going to, get a job or be
Mhm.
normal,
Right.
whatever that is. But
Yes.
yeah, but I, a psychic, whether you go to a card reader or a psychic medium like myself, you have to be willing to accept what they're telling you, because it's not
Okay.
always
Mhm.
pleasant. Because
Right, right. So there has to be a
it's
certain degree of willingness to activate and change and to receive what is meant for you to hear.
yes, yes. And
Yeah.
sometimes, if, for example, if you came to me and you weren't ready to hear what I had to tell you, the reading, I would know you're not ready, because I
Okay.
would say a couple of sentences, regarding the situation, and you would say, "Oh no, it's not that," or you would make an excuse or something. Right there, you're not ready to hear it. You're not.
Mhm. Mhm.
So you don't say it. Some things you don't tell people if they're not ready to hear. And then usually
Mm,
what, in my experience, they will come back relatively
mm,
soon, within a week or two. Okay, what's going on? Because you've dropped a seed. Well, here, this experience, this situation, and they're, oh, no, no, no. But you've dropped that seed and they're thinking about that situation. So then
mhm.
they never underestimate the power of a planted seed. You may be the one to plant the seed, but you may not be the one to harvest it when it comes to fruition and that person wants to know what's going on. That's why there's so many of us. We're not
Mhm.
for everybody. There's a different person for every different situation, every different walk of
Right,
life. Yeah.
right. And I would add, we need to be mindful of the seeds we're planting as well. Not
Yes.
necessarily us as professionals, but people, all humans in general, right? Because we
Oh,
can plant a
yes.
good seed or we can plant a not so good seed
Yes. Yes. Well, as parents, we do that with our children all the time. We're
all the
planting
time.
seeds all the time. And sometimes those seeds are not great because we're not in the greatest mindset, so therefore we say something stupid, and that's a the child picks that up, and that's a seed planted, and it
Mhm.
may not show itself for years later in their
Right.
behavior or what have you.
Um, I just have a funny story that I'll share along that lines. It just popped into my head. But when my little girl was around 3 years old, we were in the
Hmm.
bathroom and I was just getting ready for the day, and she pulled out my scale, for weighing myself. She pulled that
Uh-huh.
out and she got on the scale. And she's like 3, right? She gets on the scale and she looks down at it and she says, "Shit." And I'm like, "Oh no, that was a seed that I planted in her to be unhappy with her body." Right? And she did that just from seeing me do that multiple times without me even realizing I was planting that
Hmm.
seed or even criticizing myself to that degree. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was a great reflection of my own thoughts and behaviors, and I appreciated it because then I stopped doing that, and then she
Right.
stopped doing that. But that's
And
a
then there's all those for using your example, your daughter getting on the scale and body shaming herself because that's what's been
exactly.
role modeled to her. Then she gets older and is in school, and then there's television and magazines and top models,
Cheers.
and so then
Mhm.
that seed grows and then it's watered and flourishes under all these other societal uh, expectations of what a woman or person is supposed to look like. So you may
Right.
have planted the seed, but all that other influence is what watered it.
Right.
And then,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I will say that ever since that moment, I have worked hard to show her the opposite and give her different
Hmm.
plant better seeds. Maybe take that seed out and plant better ones.
Oh,
You had
yeah.
told me at one point too. I I am not really familiar with organized. I'm actually not familiar at all with organized religion, but I know that you are. And you had told me a Bible story at one time about the man who couldn't walk, who went to
The Pool of
the
Bethesda.
pool. Yeah. Could you I think
Yes.
that's a great example of being ready and willing to move from your unstuck, from your rut. And,
Oh,
can you tell that story?
sure. Um, in Israel, there was a pool called the Pool of Bethesda. And people believed that an angel would come and stir the waters. And if you got into the waters at the time the angel stirred the waters, you would be healed of your physical ailment. And there was a man at the Pool of Bethesda, and he had been in line for 38 years, and he could not walk. He had no use of his legs. Now, that being said, put that on the hold for a minute. In those days, the, the only, if you did not work, you did not eat. period. And in those days, the only people that were allowed to be beggars were widows, orphans, and the infirm. So basically, you would go down to what would be the equivalent of our city hall, and you would sign a paper and say, yeah, I'm going to be a beggar because I'm infirm or a widow. And they would give you a badge, and you would keep that badge with you, and then you would be allowed, you wouldn't be you wouldn't be arrested or bothered by the authorities because you had a license to beg. Now, so this man, 38 years, lived this way, and he said he had been coming to the pool of Bethesda for 38 years. Now, you would think that he would have figured out a way to get himself into the pool when the water stirred. So Jesus walks up to this man at the pool of Bethesda and says, do you want to be healed? And the man says, I have no one to put me in the water when the water moves. And Jesus said again, do you want to be healed? And when you think about it, when any of us want to be healed, are we ready to take what goes along with that? It's all brand new. For this man, it would be that if he walked after 38 years of living one way, he would have to have an entirely different life, absolutely entirely different. So he's thinking when Jesus says, do you want to be healed? And he said, yes. He said, okay, take up your bed and follow me. He didn't say, take up your bed and worship me. He didn't say, take up your bed and pray to me. He said, follow me, meaning live the way you're supposed to be, not live the way I'm showing you to live. Be kind, be generous, be loving, and you too shall do greater things than these. We all have that ability to heal. We all have that ability to heal others. Religion has just gotten in the way of teaching us how to do that. But the man had to decide, am I willing to give up what I know, even though it's uncomfortable, even though I don't like it? Am I willing to give it up to have a different life? And a lot of us are not willing to, because it's the unknown. We don't know how it's going to be. We don't know what's in store for us. And that's scary. So we stay where we are. We stay in our infirmity. We stay in our discomfort, not because we like it, but because it's familiar. It's what we know. So it's a
Right.
decision with everything we do. Are you willing, you know, do you want to be healed? Basically, that's it.
Do
Because it's,
you
and
want our, yep. I love
go
that.
ahead.
That's like the perfect way to close out our show. Are you willing to be healed? Are you willing to change? And then
Mm-hmm.
use some of these things that we've talked about to activate. So perfect way to end the show. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that so much. Can you please, I did say earlier that I put your email information in the description of this episode for people to reach you, but can you please just tell us how to contact you?
Lisa Adams 444 at gmail.com. And
Awesome.
if you email me, I'll, with your phone number, we can talk by phone, what have you.
Absolutely. So I highly, strongly recommend readings with you. They've been just super meaningful
Thank
and
you.
impactful for me. Yeah, thank you for being here. And thank you so much. And also prayers to you for safety where you are. Um,
Well,
absolutely.
fingers crossed, the winds die down, and
Mm.
it'd be nice towards the beginning of next week. We're supposed to be getting some rain, but this is California, so you never
Oh,
know. But
yes.
yes,
Yes.
we're hanging in there. We're doing okay.
Well, we'll all send vibes of rain your way. Thank you so much for being here
Thank
again.
you.
I love visiting with you, and thank you everybody who watches the show. I'm sending love to everyone out there. Next week, I'm going to continue with talking about being unstuck, but this time, next week, we're going to be seeing it from the male perspective with a very special guest named Cody Weaving. He'll be here to share his thoughts about that. So if you'd like to get a hold of me, I can be reached on my website, which is tcholistichealing.com, and that can connect you to my YouTube channel, my social media, and my email address, all of those things. So thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you all here next week.
This has been Talks with Tracy. Join us each week as Tracy and her guests will come together and realize that underneath it all, we are all the same and never alone. So join us each week and let Talks with Tracy be your safe place to land in your healing journey. Right here, Thursdays, 11 a.m.